Hello everyone. Today we're going to look at Lesson 9, Property Tax. So property tax is paid on land, the buildings on the land, and can also apply to personal property that's kept on the land, such as vehicles or boats. These taxes are used to pay for city services, so the police, the public schools, the firefighters, that type of stuff. The property tax is paid on what's called an assessed value, which is a percentage of the market value. So there are two percentages. There's the property tax percentage, and there's the assessed value percentage. And both are very important to keep in mind when buying a house. You don't just want to look at the property tax percentage, but also the assessed value percentage. So we're going to look first at finding the city tax rate. The rate is the tax needed, which is usually called the budget, divided by the total assessed value of the property in the city. So as our first example, a city has an annual, that says budget, should say budget, has an annual budget of $300 million. The assessed value of all the property is $16 million. Find the tax rate. And then part A is going to be find the tax rate as a decimal. So we have the budget, 300 million, divided by the total assessed value, 16 billion. Don't forget that when you plug this into your calculator, it's easier to get rid of all the zeros that you can instead of counting how many times you hit the zero button. So for instance, I can get rid of 3 zeros, another 3 zeros, and another 2 zeros. So in my calculator, I would just have to put 3 over 160. Right. So we have this as a decimal, 0.01875. Now we don't typically give our rates as a decimal, so let's find it as a percentage. So don't forget, percentage per cent per 100. We're going to, in this case, multiply by 100 because we want to find the percent. So we move the decimal over 2 places and we get 1.875%. Now for property taxes, it's not only found or given as a percentage, it's given a couple different ways, so we're going to see more ways as we go along here. The next way that we write a property tax rate is rate per C, and that's also considered a rate per $100. So again, C is 100. It's cent, it's centi, it's century, it's the Roman numeral for 100. You call 100 a C note, right? So C means 100. So the only difference between parts B and C is that C is always rounded to 2 decimals because it's a dollar amount. So the 1.875% becomes $1.88. Okay, so again, it's dollars, so round to 2 decimal places, but it's the same number because they're both per 100. One's per 100, the other's per $100. The next way we see it is a rate per M, and M is the Roman numeral for 1,000. You think of it as a millennium is 1,000 years, so M is per $1,000. So if I want to go from my decimal to per 1,000, I'm going to move the decimal 3 places. I always want to go back to my original decimal with all the digits, and from there move the decimal over 3 places. And again, it's dollars, so after you've moved the decimal 3 places, then round to the nearest hundredth. So we get $18.75. So there wasn't any digits after the 5, so we didn't have to round. And then the last one is mills, sometimes called whole mills. And here what we do is there's no dollar sign and replaced with just the word mills. And again, mills is coming from that M for that 1,000, that millennium or milli. So it's the same number as part D, except it's rounded up to the next integer or whole number. So the 18.75 gets rounded up to 19, no more dollar sign, and we attach the word mills to it. So in this mills, again, it's always rounded up, not rounded. So if D had been 18.23, it would still go to 19 mils. Okay, so you always round up to the next integer or the next whole number. So let's try another one. Find the rate per C and in mils if the budget is $450 million and the assessed property for the city is $32,500,000,000. So the first thing we're going to do is put it into our formula. Again, cancel as many zeros as you can. Whoops. So in this case, we're going to have 7 zeros that we can get rid of. So you're going to be left with 45 over 3,250. And that gives us this lovely crazy decimal here. So we want it in rate per C and in mils. So per C is again per 100. We're going to move the decimal over twice and then round to the next two decimals because it will be dollars. So if I move it twice, I have 1.38461538, which rounds to $1.38. If I want it in mils, I'm going to have to move the decimal 3 places. So I'm going to move it another place, so it's going to be 13.84615, blah, 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 blah. And then it's 13 point something, so that means I round up, and I get 14 mils. Okay. The next thing we're going to look at is the tax rate for a single person. So the rate times the assessed value equals the tax. And again, remember the assessed value is some percentage, like 80% or 90% of the fair market value of your house or your land. And then sometimes I'll just write it as R times A equals T. So again, rate times the assessed value equals the tax. It's the basic percent problem, just with different words. And as always, make sure your rate is in the decimal form. So for our first example, if the tax rate is 2.5%, find the tax on property assessed at $110,000. 2.5% becomes 0.025 times the 110,000 equals the tax, which is $2,750. If the tax rate is 1.75% and the property tax is $3,500, find the assessed value. So now we're looking for the assessed value and I know the tax. So you got to make sure that you're plugging the numbers into the right spots. 1.75% becomes 0.0175. We don't know A, and the tax, we know what it's equal to, is $3,500. So in order to get A by itself, you need to divide by the percentage, and we get $200,000. Something to keep in mind is that the tax rate is usually between 1 to 3%, so it's a very small percentage. So the tax itself is very, very small compared to the assessed value. If your taxes were $2,740 and your assessed value was $195,000, find the tax rate per C. So we plug in our A, we plug in our T into our equation, and we're going to solve it for R. So we divide by the 195,000 and we get R as a decimal. We need it as a rate per C. So again, we move the decimal over twice and then round to the nearest hundredth. So moving the decimal gives us 1.405, which rounds up to 1.41. And again, it's dollars per C. Find the tax due on property assessed at $350,000 when the tax rate is 23 mils. So we need to change 23 mils into the decimal form. Again, mils is per thousand, so you need to move the decimal over 3 places. So we get 0.023. Remember, you should always change that back to a percentage real quick in your head and make sure that, again, it's usually somewhere between 1 and 3. So if I wasn't paying enough attention and I only moved the decimal over twice because that's what we're used to, that would give me 0.23, which is 23%, which is way, way, way too big. No one would be able to afford that every year. So again, you move it 3 places, 0.023, that's 2.3%, that's a lot better. And if we do that math out, we get $8,050. And as a last one, find the assessed value if you paid $980 in taxes at a rate of $2.30 per C. So again, we changed $2.30 per C into a decimal. And if we notice, it's actually the same decimal as the previous one. So 23 mils is the same as $2.30 per C. And then we don't know A, and we know T is 980. So to solve for A, we divide by 0.023, and we get an assessed value of $42,608.70. Okay, so again, this really is the basic percent equation, just different names, and it's an actual real-world application of it. Okay, so make sure you read through the book and try the homework, and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.